In the deep silence of the void, before the first scream of war, humanity's colonies glittered like scattered embers across the night. Worlds spun in peace. Oceans shimmered under twin suns. Stations hummed with the music of life, and Earth itself had grown quiet, old, but proud. For 2 centuries, peace had become a habit. Trade moved faster than thought. Knowledge flowed like rivers through networks of light, and even the word war sounded ancient, a relic of darker times when humankind still feared the dark. But peace is a fragile thing. It doesn't break, it shatters. Captain Mara Vance stood on the observation deck of the Argent Dawn, a patrol cruiser orbiting Kepler 62F, a blue-green world often called New Solace. Her crew joked that it was a place where nothing ever happened. She used to laugh with them. Used to. Now her laughter had been gone for days. Something had changed in the deep bands of subspace, a frequency that shouldn't exist, a static that hummed like whispers beneath their communication relays. When she first reported it, Command dismissed it as cosmic noise. Then 3 listening posts went silent. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rowan, his young face pale in the cold light of the deck's screens. "We've lost contact with Outpost D-17. No signal. No beacon." Mara turned, eyes narrowing. "That's the 4th this week." "Yes, ma'am." Rowan hesitated. "Same pattern, just gone." Silence. Only the low hum of the ship's reactor filled the air. Mara's gaze drifted to the window. Stars like frozen sparks scattered over the velvet dark. Somewhere out there, something moved unseen. "Patch me through to command again," she ordered. "They're not responding," Rowan whispered. That's when she felt it. The old, familiar chill that had lived in the bones of every soldier before peace had made them soft. Instinct. The quiet voice that whispered, "Run." Moments later, the void screamed, a flare brighter than a sun ignited beyond the moon's orbit. Then another. And another. The entire sky seemed to burn with unnatural light. Mara's crew stumbled to their stations as alarms blared, flooding the deck in crimson. "Multiple energy surges," Rowan shouted. "They're coming out of—" He never finished. Something vast tore through space, its shape black against the stars. No signal, no identification, only a deep rumble through the void as if space itself groaned in protest. Beams of light lanced from the shadows, carving through defense grids, melting satellites, tearing apart everything that dared to stand. The Argent Dawn shuddered violently. Mara grabbed the rail. "Shields up, all power to evasive thrusters." "They're not targeting us directly," another officer cried. Oh, stars, they're hitting the planet." Mara's eyes widened. The main screen flared white, showing New Solace below, its blue oceans boiling into vapor as streaks of molten light rained from orbit. Cities vanished like sparks. "No," Rowan whispered, voice cracking. "There were 1 billion people down there." Mara couldn't answer. She couldn't breathe. In the distance, the enemy fleet grew. Hundreds of dark shapes moving with terrifying coordination, silent, merciless. They bore no markings, no communication, no face, just destruction. Then, through the static, a faint human voice broke through. The last transmission from command. "This is Central Earth Command. All colonies under attack. Unknown aggressors. Defend what you can. May humanity endure." And then, silence. The network died. Every frequency went dark. The stars blinked one by one as human worlds vanished into flame. Mara stood there trembling, feeling the terrible weight of realization. For 2 centuries, humanity had forgotten war. Now, war had remembered them. Her voice was steady when she finally spoke. "Helm, set course for Earth." Rowan looked up, eyes wet. "Captain, what can we do?" Mara turned to the viewport. The planet below burned, a silent funeral pyre. "We find out who they are," she said quietly. "And we make them remember why humanity once ruled the stars." As the Argent Dawn turned toward the dark expanse, the stars themselves seemed to flicker. Not from light, but from the fire of 1,000 dying worlds. The day the sky went silent was the day humanity's heart caught fire. And in that fire, something ancient began to wake. Earth's orbit was no longer silent. It was haunted. Wreckage drifted like slow snow. Fragments of ships, satellites, and dreams turning lazily in the pale glow of the planet below. The Argent Dawn slipped through the debris field with engines on minimum burn, her once polished hull scorched and dented. Captain Mara Vance stood at the forward deck window, her reflection a ghost against the blue curve of Earth. It should have been comforting, seeing home again, the cradle of humankind, still alive beneath its storms. But she knew the truth. Peace had died before they'd even arrived. When the ship made contact with orbital command, no one answered. The defense stations were empty, some torn apart, others cold and silent. The great orbital ring around Earth, once a marvel of light and civilization, now hung in shattered arcs. "Rowan," she said softly, "send a pulse. Any frequency. Someone must be listening." He nodded, fingers moving across the console. A low hum filled the bridge. For a long moment, nothing. Then, a flicker. A voice. "Any ships? This is Ground Command, New Geneva." "We're alive down here, barely. Repeat, we're alive." Mara exhaled, a small trembling breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Patch them through." A woman's voice came through the static, rough and exhausted. "Identify yourself. We thought every ship was gone." "This is Captain Mara Vance of the Argent Dawn Kepler Patrol Division," Mara replied. "We survived the initial strike. What's your situation?" There was silence, then a slow, heavy sigh. "Captain, it's not just Earth. The colonies are gone, all of them. Luna's dark. Mars is barely holding. We've lost contact with Titan, with Europa, with the rim systems." Mara's hands tightened on the console. "You're saying—" "I'm saying humanity is burning," the woman said. "We don't even know who they are. They never speak, never answer. They strike, they vanish, but they're precise, surgical. They hit our leadership, our defense nets, our relays. They don't want territory. They want silence." Mara closed her eyes. Silence, that word again. "Listen," Ground Command continued. "We're regrouping survivors under the old Alliance bunker beneath Geneva. If you're still operational, we could use a miracle. Or a weapon." Mara glanced around her bridge, the tired faces of her crew, their fear barely hidden behind duty. "Understood," she said quietly. "We'll bring both." Hours later, the Argent Dawn pierced the clouds and descended through the scorched atmosphere. What had once been a world of cities and light now bore scars like open wounds, blackened craters where capitals had stood, oceans clouded with ash. New Geneva still stood, barely. A shell of concrete and steel dug into the mountains. Landing thrusters burned away the dust as the ship settled on the cracked runway. When Mara stepped out, the air bit cold against her skin. Soldiers moved like ghosts among the ruins. Some wore old Earth Fleet uniforms. Others civilian coats turned into makeshift armor. A man met her at the ramp. Older, gray-haired, eyes sharp with the look of someone who'd seen the world end and refused to bow. "Captain Vance?" he asked. She saluted. "Sir." "Commander Elias Rowe," he said, returning it. "You're late to the funeral." Mara looked around. "Then let's make sure it's not humanity's." He almost smiled. Almost. "Come on. There's something you should see." They walked through the ruined corridors beneath Geneva, walls covered with maps, holograms flickering faintly with what remained of the star network. Most of the lights were gone. Most of the people, too. Elias stopped before a large projection table. At its center glowed a symbol, the pattern of subspace interference Mara had detected days ago. "We finally decoded part of their signal," he said. "It's not communication. It's resonance, a field they generate when they enter a system. Like a signature, a storm that kills everything in its wake." Mara frowned. "Then we can track them?" Maybe. If we survive long enough. He turned to her, eyes hard. The Council's gone. Commands scattered. The Argent Dawn may be the last functional warship in human space. If we're going to fight back, it starts with you. The words settled heavy in the air. For a moment, Mara said nothing. Then she straightened, her voice quiet, but steady. Then we fight. No treaties, no hesitation. If they want silence. She looked up at the faint light filtering through the cracked ceiling, the stars barely visible through ash. Then we'll answer with thunder. The world above lay wounded, but something fierce stirred beneath the rubble. A will older than fear, sharper than grief. The first embers of humanity's resistance had begun to glow. The Argent Dawn drifted in low orbit, silent but alive like a coiled predator waiting for the first scent of blood. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge watching the remnants of New Geneva below. The city had survived barely, yet its people moved as though shadows haunted them. They had seen death come from the stars and survived. That was enough to ignite hope. "Captain," Rowan said, his voice tight with barely suppressed fear, "we've scanned the perimeter. No enemy ships in local orbit." "Yet," Mara nodded. "Good. It's time we stop waiting and start answering." Rowan glanced at the console. "Answering with what? We're one ship against whatever they are." "They vaporized worlds." Mara turned, her eyes catching the pale reflection of Earth in the viewport. "With everything we are, and everything we can make them fear." The plan was simple, reckless, and necessary. Humanity's surviving forces had no hope of matching the enemy in numbers or firepower. But they had ingenuity, courage, and one deadly truth. The invaders had never faced a species willing to fight without restraint. The first strike would be surgical. Mara's target, the subspace storm generator detected near Saturn, the heart of the enemy's assault wave. Destroy it and maybe the colonies left in the rim could survive. Fail and all humanity would burn. The journey was tense. Every blip on the scanners, every shift of shadow in the void drew breath and held it. Crew members whispered prayers, promises, and regrets. Mara moved among them quietly, offering nods, soft reassurances. But inside her chest roared a storm as loud as any engine. Fear, fury, and an almost sacred determination. When they reached the edge of the outer system, the void was empty, silent, too silent. Then it erupted, a ripple in space, subtle at first, then growing into a wave that bent starlight and sucked the air from the heart. Shadows moved within it, dark shapes like knives slicing through reality. Mara's hand gripped the console. "They're here," Rowan said, voice barely audible. Mara didn't answer. She only whispered, "Then let's show them who we are." The first salvo was a warning, a lightning strike. The Argent Dawn fired its pulse cannons, the energy cutting through the void like fire through paper. The enemy didn't flinch. They moved as one, shadows converging, their form impossible to define. Mara could feel it, their intelligence cold and precise, calculating every possibility before it happened. Then they struck. Energy beams danced around the ship, twisting in impossible arcs, slamming into the shields with the force of collapsing stars. The bridge shook. Sparks flew. Crew screamed. And still Mara remained calm and steady. "Evasive," she commanded. "Focus on the generator." They maneuvered through the storm, weaving around beams, dodging the impossible geometry of enemy movement. Every second was a battle for survival. Every action a prayer to humanity's stubborn heart. When the generator came into view, Mara felt it. A monstrous silhouette, vast and humming with power. It pulsed like a living star, an instrument of death that had already devoured countless worlds. "Target it," she shouted. "All fire now!" Energy tore from the Argent Dawn, lances of humanity's defiance slicing through the generator's defenses. Explosions rippled across the hull of the enemy construct, shaking it like a dying god. The shadows shrieked or something like it, a sound that scraped the mind and chilled the soul. But the generator did not fall. Not yet. One shadow detached, racing toward the ship. Rowan's fingers flew across the controls, but Mara's voice cut through, iron sharp. "Hold steady. Brace for impact." The shadow collided with the Argent Dawn and the world shook. Alarms blared, the floor trembled, and Mara felt the raw alien intelligence press against her mind. Probing, testing, seeking fear. But humanity did not yield. In that moment, she understood something profound. The enemy had never faced us at full strength. They had never faced a species willing to burn as brightly as it could, no matter the cost. Counterstrike, Mara yelled, and the ship responded like an extension of her will. Pulse cannons fired again, torpedoes streaked like falling stars, and the generator shuddered. A section collapsed, sparks flying into the void. It wasn't enough, but it was a start, and sometimes a start is all it takes. The Argent Dawn limped from the debris of the generator, battered, but alive. Mara's crew cheered softly, a sound more fragile than any cannon fire but fiercer than fear. Humanity had struck back. Humanity had survived the first test. Mara stood at the viewport looking at the void. Shadows still moved beyond the stars, patient and waiting, but she smiled faintly, a fire kindling in her chest. "They think they've seen what we are," she murmured. "They haven't, not yet." In the darkness between worlds, humanity's defiance had begun to burn. And nothing, not fire, not shadow, not fear, would stop it. The first strike had been a whisper in the void, faint, desperate, but alive. Humanity had survived, but the cost was written in the stars. Systems burned, colonies vanished, and countless lives had been erased before they even understood the enemy. Captain Mara Vance walked through the corridors of the Argent Dawn, her boots echoing against the metal floors. The crew moved around her, each carrying their own weight of grief and determination. The young pilots who had cheered at the first victory now stared at the void outside, eyes haunted, lips pressed tight. "Sir," Rowan said softly, "New Geneva reports reinforcements from the Rim colonies. Not many, but enough to form a task force." Mara's gaze drifted to the viewport where the stars seemed to stretch endlessly, indifferent to the suffering below. "Then we gather them," she said quietly. "Every ship, every crew, every person who can stand when we form a line. Not to die, to fight." The task force was an unlikely assembly. Rusted freighters retrofitted with weapons, old science vessels converted into frigates, and a few surviving patrol cruisers formed a ragged, desperate fleet. But Mara saw something that mattered more than metal or firepower: resolve. The kind of resolve that had built civilizations and toppled tyrants. The kind of resolve that would make the void itself tremble. Elias Rowe, the veteran commander of New Geneva, approached her in the command room. His face bore the lines of grief, sleepless nights, and an unwavering duty. "Captain," he said, voice heavy, "we can't wait for them to come to us. If we don't strike now, they'll extinguish every remaining human outpost. We need to lead, show them they cannot erase us without consequence." Mara's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "Then we strike. But we strike smart. Guerrilla raids, hit-and-run attacks, subspace interference disruption. We use every advantage we have, no matter how small. Fear is theirs to lose." The first coordinated attack was brutal and beautiful in its simplicity. Mara led a fleet of scavenged vessels toward a system the enemy had stripped bare only days before. Humans moved like shadows through the debris, striking with precision, using the enemy's own waves of destruction against them. On the bridge of the Argent Dawn, Mara watched the monitors. Sparks erupted as torpedoes struck, shields flared, and shadowed vessels twisted and burned. "Status?" she asked. Rowan's voice was tight but proud. "Multiple enemy units destroyed. Losses limited considering the scale." Mara exhaled slowly. "Good. Signal the fleet, retreat in formation. We fight again when they least expect it." But victory, brief as it was, came with a cost. During the engagement, a young pilot, barely 19, had sacrificed her ship to save a civilian freighter caught in the enemy's crossfire. Her name was Lyra Cade. Mara had watched the explosion from the viewport, a brilliant, terrible flare of light, and life extinguished too soon. Grief hung heavy in the command room. Mara said nothing at first. Silence spoke louder than any words could. Finally, she whispered, "They are not just enemies. They are reminders of what we have lost and what we will not lose again." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Humans are stubborn, Mara. We adapt, we endure, and we fight like nothing else in the galaxy. Lyra's sacrifice will not be forgotten. It won't be in vain." Mara nodded, feeling a spark of something fierce, and not just duty but pride. In the face of annihilation, humanity's spirit refused to break. Night fell over New Geneva. The city lay in ruins, yet lights flickered in broken windows. Children and survivors moved cautiously, scavenging, helping one another, rebuilding small sanctuaries amid the ash. Mara looked down from the observation deck, seeing humanity's resilience mirrored in every shadow, every small act of courage. Somewhere, deep in the void, the shadows waited. They had struck first, believing humanity fragile and fearful. But humanity had a fire they could not snuff out, the fire of will, of hope, of refusal to bow. And Mara knew this. The war was far from over. The coming battles would test them all, physically, emotionally, and morally. Yet in every heart, from seasoned commanders to the youngest recruit, burned one certainty. Humanity would not vanish quietly, not while they could strike back. Not while they could rise, not while even a single spark of life remained. The first whispers of counterattack spread across the stars, carried by signals and hope alike. Humans were fighting back, not as pawns, not as victims, but as a force the galaxy had long underestimated. And in that rising fire, a truth became clear. The enemy may have brought death, but humanity had brought war. The void is patient. It waits, it watches. It remembers every whisper of life that dares to pierce its darkness. Mara Vance knew this now. She felt it in the tremor of every jump through subspace, in the eerie silence between bursts of communication. Humanity was fighting back. But the enemy, whatever it was, they learned faster, adapted faster, and punished faster. The Argent Dawn led a convoy of human vessels through the outer systems, aiming for a supply hub that might be humanity's last hope. Each ship moved with precision, each maneuver a careful dance through the shadows. But even in victory, fear lingered. "Captain," Rowan said, voice tight. "New readings from the fringe of Tau Ceti, subspace interference. It's multiplying. They're adapting to our attacks." Mara studied the data, eyes scanning graphs and projections. The enemy's patterns shifted with each human strike, almost as if they were learning in real time, anticipating reactions. But Mara's mind didn't quail. It sharpened. "Then we fight differently," she said. "Not the way they expect. We use what they don't understand. Unpredictability, courage, and human instinct. That's our weapon." The first encounter of the day came without warning. A shadowed vessel emerged from the void, twisting space around it like molten metal. Its energy signature was overwhelming, enough to melt the hull of a patrol cruiser with a glance. Mara felt her stomach tighten but did not flinch. "Prepare for engagement," she commanded. "All units, hold formation. Focus fire on weak points. Concentrate everything." The battle was chaos, brilliant and terrifying. Pulses of light tore through darkness, ships twisted and spun under the immense force of alien technology, and the air inside the Argent Dawn seemed to vibrate with tension. Rowan shouted, "They're learning. They're predicting our maneuvers." Mara's jaw tightened. "Good, then we change, now." She ordered sudden, erratic jumps through subspace, maneuvers no enemy could predict. Human vessels followed, trusting instinct and training, weaving through energy storms and debris clouds. The shadows faltered, unfamiliar with the chaos of human intuition. A strike team boarded one of the enemy constructs, humans stepping into the alien ship for the first time, finding it not dead but alive with energy that hummed through the corridors like a heartbeat. They saw the impossible architecture, walls bending, floors floating, light that was alive and aware. One of the boarding party, Lieutenant Soren Hale, whispered into his communicator, voice trembling, "Captain, it's conscious. I think it knows we're here." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then let it know this. Humans are not afraid." The ship exploded from within seconds later, a ripple through the enemy formation. Survivors cheered and mourned in equal measure. Another victory, another sacrifice. But the price weighed on Mara. Every successful strike left her hollow, haunted by faces she couldn't forget. Lyra and now dozens more, whose lives were claimed by the very battles humanity fought to survive. As the fleet regrouped in the quiet of a safe system, Elias Rowe approached her. "Captain, they're not just attacking our ships. They're probing our minds, testing our courage, our fear. They're not like us." Mara's gaze hardened. "No, but they've never seen us fight without restraint. That's something they can't understand." She looked across the fleet, across the ragged but defiant faces of humans who had seen death and returned. A spark burned in her chest, hotter than the void around them. "They think the galaxy belongs to them," Mara said softly. "But humanity, Humanity doesn't belong anywhere except everywhere, and if they want to test us, we will show them the strength of what they can never extinguish. In the darkness beyond the fleet, the shadows pulsed, a rhythm like a heartbeat. They had learned, adapted, and hunted. But one truth remained. Humanity's defiance was raw, unpredictable, and relentless. And as the human fleet jumped toward the next system, Mara felt the unshakable certainty settle in her bones. The war was far from over. But humanity would not hide. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would burn brilliantly through the void itself. Somewhere in the infinite expanse of space, the shadows waited. They had met humanity, and for the first time, they had felt resistance, and resistance, Mara knew, was the beginning of fire. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as the human fleet approached the outer rim of the Aldebaran system. Every vessel, patched and reforged, carried the weight of billions of lost lives. Humanity was no longer just surviving. It was fighting back, and it would not retreat. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the Argent Dawn, staring into the swirling void where enemy vessels waited. Their forms were more terrifying than ever. Shadows that seemed to stretch and twist beyond comprehension, pulsing with energy that defied logic. Yet even in the face of such fear, Mara felt no hesitation. Only determination. "Captain," Rowan said, voice tight. "Fleet reports suggest the enemy is consolidating. They're preparing something massive." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we strike first, hit them before they can dictate the terms." The plan was audacious, almost suicidal. Mara's fleet would split into 3 groups, 2 to harass and distract the enemy, and the Argent Dawn to lead a concentrated strike at the heart of the enemy formation. Every ship knew the risk. Every crew member carried the knowledge that survival was not guaranteed. Elias Rowe approached her, eyes hard with resolve. "Captain, we've trained them. They're ready." Mara nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "Then let them see what humanity is capable of." The first clash erupted like a supernova. Pulse cannons fired, plasma streaked through the void, and ships danced among the debris of shattered moons. Mara guided the Argent Dawn with precision, weaving between enemy beams and unpredictable movements. Every human vessel fought like a living weapon, each strike fueled by grief, fear, and an unyielding will. But the enemy had adapted again. Their shadows moved faster, striking with a precision that made Mara's stomach knot. One frigate exploded near her, debris scattering into the void. Rowan swallowed hard but kept the ship steady. "Captain," he shouted, "they're learning from every maneuver. We can't keep up." Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we stop being predictable. Think like humans, not machines." She ordered sudden, chaotic maneuvers, sharp dives, unpredictable jumps, and feints designed to confuse the enemy. The Argent Dawn became a blur of motion, a symbol of humanity's refusal to bow. In the chaos, Lyra Cade's memory, the young pilot who had sacrificed herself, surged through Mara's mind. Every life lost was a flame that fueled this rebellion. Humanity did not fight for glory. Humanity fought for survival, for vengeance, and for the promise that no one would vanish quietly. Deep in the heart of the enemy formation, Mara spotted the true source of their strength, a colossal war nexus, pulsing with energy, anchoring the shadows and amplifying their attacks. Destroy it and the enemy fleet would fracture. Leave it and humanity risked extinction. "Prepare for boarding," Mara said softly. "A strike team will go in. The rest of the fleet keeps them busy." Rowan's eyes widened. "You're going in too?" Mara smiled faintly, grim but proud. "I lead from the front. Humanity fights as one, no exceptions." The boarding operation was chaos incarnate. Humans stepped into alien corridors that bent physics itself, where gravity shifted like a dream and energy pulsed through walls like veins of a living creature. Shadows attacked, probing, testing, and striking, but the humans fought with a precision born of desperation and courage. Explosions rocked the Nexus. Mara and her team planted charges in critical nodes, igniting them one by one. The alien structure shuddered, lights flickering like dying stars. Outside, the fleet pressed the attack, exploiting the disruption. Then the Nexus exploded, a wave of energy cascading across the enemy fleet. Ships shattered. Shadows screamed in forms that seemed to defy sound, and the void itself felt the tremor of humanity's fury. The human fleet held together, battered but alive. Mara watched the destruction ripple across the field, a firestorm of human resolve and indomitable will. Elias Rowe approached her later, his face streaked with ash and sweat. "Captain, we did it. Against impossible odds. We did it." Mara's gaze drifted to the stars. The enemy was not gone, far from it. But humanity had proven something monumental. They were not prey. They were hunters, architects of their own destiny, a force that would not yield. And in that burning silence, Mara whispered to herself, voice fierce with unspoken promise, "They will never forget the fire of humanity." The void had never been more silent, not the calm of peace, but the tense, suffocating quiet before a storm erupts. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the Argent Dawn, her reflection etched against the infinite black. The enemy fleet had retreated, perhaps for now, but Mara knew better. Shadows never slept. They only waited. Elias Rowe stepped beside her, weary but resolute. Their regrouping, far from finished. This next strike, it will decide the fate of humanity. Mara's lips pressed together. Then we make them remember us not as prey, but as fire. The plan was daring to the edge of recklessness. Humanity's surviving forces would converge on the system where the enemy's command nexus resided, the dark heart of the void, where every attack against human colonies had been orchestrated. If Mara's fleet succeeded, the galaxy would see that humans were no longer defenseless. If they failed, everything would burn, ships assembled, patched, and repurposed, each carrying crew who had seen death and returned. Pilots adjusted their helmets, hands gripping controls with a mix of fear and determination. Mara walked among them, her voice calm but carrying the weight of conviction. "Today," she said, "we fight not because we must, but because we will. The enemy believes they can erase us. They are wrong. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not hide. Humanity fights." A cheer rose, quiet but fierce, reverberating through every ship, every heart, every mind. The final engagement erupted like a supernova. Shadows poured from the nexus, their shapes impossible, twisting with lethal precision. Energy beams scorched space, tearing through ships that had already seen too much loss. Mara's fleet responded with every weapon humanity could muster. Pulse cannons, torpedoes, improvised railguns, even subspace disruption waves. The battle was chaos given form. Ships danced and spun, weaving through beams of alien energy, while humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Every maneuver, every sacrifice, every act of courage pushed back the shadows bit by bit. Mara led the assault directly to the nexus, the Argent Dawn slicing through enemy lines like a blade of defiance. Rowan piloted with unwavering focus, matching her every instinct, every move honed through months of survival and rage. Inside the nexus, the structure was alive with alien energy, pulsating and watching, probing for weakness. Mara's boarding team penetrated its heart, planting charges in the critical conduits. The air hummed, alive with the consciousness of something vast and alien, but humanity did not flinch. "Every second counts," Mara whispered into her communicator. "Hold on. Make it count." The charges detonated and the nexus shuddered, its energy screaming across space. Shadows reeled, twisting in ways that defied comprehension. Ships fell and some were lost forever, but the ripple of destruction spread, breaking the enemy's formation, scattering their fleet and shattering the command structure. The aftermath was silence, but not the silence of fear. Mara floated on the bridge, staring into the stars. The enemy was broken, their shadowed fleet scattered across the void. Humanity had survived. Humanity had struck back with fire, fury, and unyielding courage. Rowan approached, face streaked with soot and exhaustion. "Captain, we did it. Against everything, we won." Mara nodded, but her eyes lingered on the void. "Not all of them. Shadows remain, but we have shown them one truth. Humanity does not surrender, and humanity does not die quietly." Elias Rowe joined them, placing a hand on Mara's shoulder. "We've burned bright today. They will remember the name of our species. And in every system, every survivor will carry that memory forward." Mara exhaled, a fire kindling in her chest that was hotter than any star. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "We rebuild, we protect, and we fight as humans, as one and without restraint. The galaxy may have underestimated us, but never again." Below, the ashes of lost colonies glimmered faintly in the light of distant suns. Humanity had lost much, but it had survived. Humanity had risen, fierce and unbroken, a beacon of defiance in the void. Somewhere far beyond the horizon of comprehension, the shadows recoiled. They had learned what no machine could calculate, that humanity, even at its most battered, burned brighter than the darkness that sought to consume it. And in that fire, Mara knew something unshakable. The human spirit would endure, limitless and unstoppable for all the ages to come. The stars held their breath, and humanity answered, a brilliant, unyielding roar across the infinite.